Good morning or good afternoon. Hi, and welcome to the Industry 4.0 Club. I'd like to wish everyone a good local time, whatever time it is for you. And before we begin, I'd like to know a little bit about us in today's conversation. So the main purpose of the Industry 4.0 Club is to accelerate the evolution to Industry 4.0 by engaging the power of talent worldwide. This is Women in Manufacturing. This is our Tuesday conversation with a focus on tech and manufacturing. In this space, we focus on the perspectives of women in the industry, and we'd like to welcome you to our fall series where we highlight women in software engineering. We're really excited to introduce you to women we've worked with in various roles in industrial software engineering, in manufacturing, and Industry 4.0. I'm Grace Donovan, an Industry 4.0 Club co-founder and the Women in Manufacturing co-host. I serve as the executive director of the Rural Engagement and Vitality Center at Eastern Oregon University in Eastern Oregon. And we work with connecting university talent to rural communities to promote vibrancy and economic development and progress in rural spaces. First, I want to introduce, for the first time ever, Kate Arndt, who is my fellow Industry 4.0 Club co-host and co-founder today. Hi, Kate.
Hello. Hi, Grace. Hi, Sarah. Hello, everybody who's able to join live or sees us later, but nice to be here. Like Grace mentioned, I'm new to hosting. And I guess for those of you who don't know who I am an industrial engineer. I worked in, oil and gas and in manufacturing for the majority of my career, and then I switched to technology. Now I'm more on the let me help manufacturers make use of their data and drive value. So my whole goal is to help that happen, and then mostly in this situation, I can't wait to learn from our guests.
So speaking of which, we have Sarah Curnow today joining us, who's the CEO and co-founder of Credo Software. Sarah, welcome to Industry 4.0.
Morning, good afternoon, depending on where you're from.
Okay, so with that said, I guess, let's start off, Sarah, if you don't mind kind of starting off, sharing a little bit about your background, your journey to what got you to where you are. We're super excited to learn from you today.
Okay. Well, strangely enough, I was a history major, but during the dot-com era, it's amazing how you could pivot for so many different things. I had this love of technology from an early age. WizKids was one of the first shows that I vividly remember, and Knight Rider and things like that. I always thought technology was super cool. But it was never a direction that was encouraged as a profession. But when I was 13, a gentleman thought my science idea with geothermal energy was really cool. And he worked at Fluor Daniel as an engineer, and he was upgrading his computer from a TI-99 to a Commodore. Just shows you my age a little. And he gave me his TI, but my mother would only let me use book type code. She wouldn't let me use the cartridges. So I learned to code in BASIC when I was 13. And so I had this skill set that didn't come to help me later on. And so I was very thankful for my mother, because she really did push me. We always went to the library every week and would have baskets of books. And, now my Kindle Unlimited, I can't even imagine. I mean, the library we have at our fingertips now is just phenomenal. But anyway, for 30 years, though, I've been involved in technology and been able to use it to have as a career that's been able to engage with my family and encourage my girls and my sons towards that lifestyle, although all of them have chosen other career paths. But I'm excited. Being a mother of 5, definitely understanding processes. I was color coding before I had a true understanding of how I was going to implement manufacturing. For the last 2 years, I have been helping with continuous improvement and HR solutions in manufacturing. So that's where I got my start. Mentorship definitely was a huge part of it. Having a mother-in-law who started a business at 52 and sold and retired, those sort of things all kind of played into helping me realize how much seeking to help others can help yourself. So that's just kind of a start of where I am now. Um, I guess now, we have things from that DOS spot to now, I'm programming in Blazor and Azure AI and trying to help people understand that you got to start small and sky's the limit. So
Yeah. So I really like that you mentioned that the fact that your mother-in-law started a company like later in life. And I think so often we tell ourselves like, oh, it's too late. Like I missed the mark, or I didn't do something in time. And so
exactly.
to see people kind of in your life doing things perhaps at an unconventional time is always something that I personally find encouraging because it's never too late to start. And you said
It's
she was
never too late to start at all. And that's the thing. For me, I see opportunity. There's so much opportunity. And in technology, my daughter's a nurse and I love what she does in that profession. She's serving people. But those are long hours and those are hard hours and it's hard as a family to kind of fit in how to get all that done in a day and live your life. And so part of what technology has done for me is create an avenue to raise my children on my own terms. When you add manufacturing, it's a 24/7 business. You can pop in and out and have people helping you. So.
Yeah. Could you tell us a little bit about how you made it work for you? I think it's very rare that women entrepreneurs that have raised a family of 5 and achieved the same level of success, or it's like, what's the secret? Or how did you kind of, make it fit your life?
Well, one I would say is because remote working was definitely a must. And a lot of manufacturers were not 100% open to that. But we managed to make the right connections, and there were opportunities where I could do debugging and other things from home, and I could send people to client sites. And so I was constantly kind of pivot. There were some times where it was difficult, and you just have to pause and know, just because I'm stopping right now in the way that I'm doing everything, you have to pause. Sometimes there are seasons, but with technology, it's very quick to catch up. If you're continuously running, if you're continuously putting things in front of you, it's not a, oh no, I don't know how to do this program, but there's programs now out there and there are tools that you can go online and you can keep your skills up. And there's LinkedIn Learning now, there's YouTube, there's so many ways where you could go through and keep up with what you're doing. So if I ever felt like I was falling behind, back in the day, I'd have to buy a book, those nice big thick books on on C and these things like that. So I'm like, I have no, and you try to take notes and you feel like you're back in college. Now it's like, I want to make this do this. Learning to ask the right question, that's one of the most important things in technology. If you can ask the right question, with ChatGPT, if you ask the wrong question, you're going to get sent down a path. But learning how to write the answer, the same thing with AI. People are like, oh, this is how we solve everything. We're going to make AI do everything for us. Well, guess what? AI has to learn too. Sometimes in the time that you could learn it, training AI would actually take longer. So sometimes you have to look at, okay, is this the best usage of technology, and kind of pivot.
That's so cool. And I love how curious you are. Like, it sounds like you're just continuously growing and learning. And I think that's so critical in technology. Like you mentioned, everything's changing so quickly. I really admire that you're able to kind of keep up with that pace. And I love that you brought up, ChatGPT and asking those right questions, and coding. Yeah, I asked, how do I set up I think I had access to the NVIDIA open programming, and I had to ask ChatGPT to even start implementing it on my computer. And I was able to set something up for the first time that I've never tried before. Super cool that you do that. And you're making me laugh this whole time. Like, back in the day we had to buy these books, and now we have AI. So that's super cool.
I mean, seriously, back in the day, we called like this.
Yes.
And we were oftentimes, my kitchen phone to talk to my husband when we were engaged, my whole family got to pay attention to the conversation. Now my granddaughter, she does this number when she's talking on the phone because the cell phone is flat. She has no concept of that curved phone.
What does this
the kids
mean?
were in a play once and they had to do a rotary phone, and it was funny to watch them trying to figure out how to use it.
Oh my.
Yeah, they're pretty tricky.
How exponentially things have, it seems like since the dot-com era to now, what's going to surprise my granddaughter when she's my age? That's the sort of thing that I'm passionate about is what is going to be game changing to her. And it's done so much. One of the things with being passionate about reading, Jules Verne and Burroughs and Asimov, all of them had all these great ideas, but they never saw any of those things come to fruition. And people talked about the Dick Tracy watch, and we now have our iPhone watch, and so yes, I've always wanting to learn about this thing, but I was a slow adapt. I will admit I didn't get an iPhone till iPhone 3. But I did have a family member who, when she first got a cell phone, wouldn't turn it on because she was afraid of using her minutes.
Oh, wow.
But to her defense, she was older and her idea of time was different. What would be usage?
Mm-hmm.
So ownership was used, turning power, flipping the switch.
Well, it's interesting to see. Oh, sorry, Kate. I apologize. I have a little bit of funky internet today. It's interesting to hear you talk about kind of where you perhaps fall on kind of the early adopter or the adoption bell curve, right? I think we often think of like entrepreneurs and innovators as being really at the cutting edge, but I myself is either like with the masses or kind of on the tail end. I personally like to wait and see, which has maybe saved me some pain adopting new technology. But it's interesting, technology is changing so fast that I think a certain amount of let's wait and see is healthy. I'm curious how you've kind of brought that into your kind of entrepreneurial life.
Absolutely. Like I said, with the iPhone, don't get the phone when it first comes out, because they're usually going to have a battery issue. There's usually some software glitch that hasn't been debugged properly. And really almost every time the phone comes out, if you wait 6 months, you'll find the battery's better and the software's better. And usually the software issue is something to do with the coding. So things like that. I my first hybrid this year. I've been looking a lot into the EV. I was kind of hoping that the EV would catch up before I had to stop driving a manual. I love driving a manual, so it was
same.
So I kept my FJ, but I got rid of my I, and I was really sad. But I was burning now post COVID. I'm traveling a lot, and so I was like, I need something that when I'm driving to Atlanta, I'm not having to keep my foot on the clutch. So I got a Honda CRV, and Honda's one of those companies that I love because when the minivans first came out, they waited, and when it came out, when it finally did come out, it you had to wait to get it. And so I actually went to the Atlanta Auto Show to try out minivans when I was pregnant, see which one had the best. If it had electric doors, if it had this, what was the best functionality? So when I went to purchase, I walked in, and this is the funny thing. They always look at the husband, and he said, "Don't look at me. She knows it," because I was asking all the questions about the engine and all the parts and the mileage and just various features. And I kept looking over to my husband, and he's like, no, she's the one that's going to be driving it mostly, and truthfully, she knows more about it probably than you do. So so I do like to do my research before, and I think that's part of where my history major kind of comes in. I have to research. I have to see what other people have said, what has Edmund said about this car, or what, with the technology, reading one of the various magazines. There's so many now. But I like collaboration is so much better now than it used to be. When you want to get that information, when you search on Google, you can see Reddit, all these different sites. You can go and you can find out what are people thinking. That's what I love about technology right now is you're not on your own. And if you think you're struggling with something, there's always a place where you can ask a question.
Yeah.
So, like I said, learning to ask the right question.
Yeah.
Well, I admire that because not everyone does. Like you sound, you're a problem solver. You sounds like anything that you want to learn, you just go out and learn it, and it's really, really cool. So I really admire that. So you mentioned, I think, a little bit about that experience with people looking at your husband, right? I can relate. It's a pretty funny situation. So when it comes to being a CEO in tech and manufacturing, like, do you have to ever break the ice when it comes to maybe expectations of, like, I don't know.
You
I
have
guess
to demand a seat at the table. You can do it graciously, but you definitely have to demand a seat at the table. You have to come forward. You have to. When I was younger, my brother pretty much, he would ask for things and he would get it over and over. I never realized he was asking for it. And I was an adult. At one point, I was like, "How did you get mom and dad to let you?" He's like, "I just asked." He's like, "Sarah, the answer is always no if you don't ask." Oh. And that was such a game changer for me, because I think a lot of times we're like, "Oh, if I ask, they'll think this," or, "Oh, if I ask, they won't like me," or, "If I ask this," and there's a point in your life where not everybody's going to like you. And absolutely, the answer is always no if you don't ask. But you kind of have to tell people how to treat you. And some of it can be done, like I said, gently, graciously, but kindness isn't always sweet. Kindness isn't always sweet. I mean, letting a child touch a hot stove is not kind. You might use a firm voice to tell them not to touch that hot stove. So a lot of what I've learned about technology kind of is played in with motherhood. It's mother of all inventions. I mean, we don't say father of all inventions. We say mother. I mean, necessity. It's mothers. Mothers are constantly realizing. I mean, everything I know about inventory management, I learned at a small age on how to put a pantry together. You can't make a recipe if you don't have all the ingredients. You can't run a production line if you don't have everything kitted together. So you have to kind of think through. Don't belittle yourself and let people treat you as less.
Yeah.
Now, I will admit, there are times if I read the room and I walk in and I know, because my husband and I work together. If we come in and I realize, looking at the room, I'm going to take a back seat and let him run. It's not a matter of me belittling myself. It's a matter of I'm probably not going to take this client, and I'm just going to let him run the show, because this is a room not. But sometimes it works out. Sometimes they later realize that I know what I'm talking about, and but you have to make that decision. And so I think that's a kindness to yourself.
Absolutely. Respecting yourself and all that work that you do, and all of your skills that you learn, regardless of how, and making sure that people understand what you're capable of. And sometimes I find being more firm and making yourself a seat at the table, also helps position yourself in a way that is heard, more after time. It's kind of being maybe more assertive up front, kind of, I think, helps just set the tone. But I think that that's a lot of valuable advice, and I appreciate you sharing that. I'm sorry, Grace, I think I might have interrupted your
Nope, not at all. like really tying into that, because so much of what we've been discussing is kind of that relationship dynamic. And so, Sarah, when we first met, you talked a lot about making projects about the people, not necessarily about the technology, especially early on at the start of your entrepreneurship journey, and kind of how you were able to leverage your fluency in tech jargon and translating that to like terms that people could understand. So could you tell us a little bit about why it was more important to focus on people rather than the technology, especially at the start?
I really think that when you speak in terms that people understand, and like I said, if you need to break it down to the kitchen pantry,
yeah,
you build a relationship and it opens up an avenue for opportunity. I mean, one of the biggest things I say over and over is recognize that when I come onto a client site, the people who are asking for help, they might either be able to do what I can do for them, just time. I mean, or their skill set is being used in another area completely. They have a skill, they have something that I don't know how to do. And they talk in terminology that I don't understand. When I first started working in the manufacturing environment, there were so many, I can never say this word, acronyms. 3-letter meant a whole lot of things. And I'd be like, okay, wait. And I literally would write it down, and I have to thankfully be able to Google it and look it up. What are they talking here? But engineering change request was called ECR, and then all these things. In tech, we have terms like that too. If we start talking in the tech lingo, and sometimes even Industry 4.0, people are like, "What's that?" And if you say smart mobility, they're still like, "What's that?" Does that mean like with a phone? If you say smart factory, let's make it. You kind of have to figure out, okay, which term is going to communicate. It's like you could read Lord of the Rings to a 2-year-old, but they wouldn't understand what you're doing. I mean, it would be just, we got to do Cat in the Hat first. And so let's keep it a little simpler. I think truthfully, if you're going to help somebody, you've got to pause and actively listen to what, I guess honestly, part of it's not just our speaking. Part of it is pausing and actively listening to what their pain points are. Because if you're not listening, you're not going to give them what they need. And you're not really doing your job then, because you're coming in as a consultant to help them. So I think a lot of what I like about what I do with technology is knowing that I'm coming in and then I gently approach them and allow them to do what they do better, especially if it's a quick win, like through rapid application development. Then I've done my job at the end of the day. I've helped people, which is what I want to do. When I first was in technology, I dealt with so many consultants who thought they were computer gods. And being a woman, they naturally assumed I didn't know anything about what they were doing. They didn't understand relational. They didn't understand relational databases. They didn't understand structure. And they would come in, they had a certification they had gotten, and they thought suddenly, everybody who they didn't have that certification know anything about anything. And if something was wrong, it was all their fault. They must have clicked the wrong button. And that crashed whatever they did, and I'm like, clicking one button should not crash anything if your code is good behind. So having dealt with that, when I started my company, I really wanted everybody to be more of that gentle, treat people like a baby bunny. Let's not go in, all the songs about bashing bunnies on the head. Let's not do that. Let's come in and gently help people, because when they're calling you, they're struggling. I mean, if their internal IT department can't help them, they're struggling. And so be an advocate.
Yeah.
And don't push things on them, because it will at one client site, because everybody's client site is a little bit different in how they run things. And if they have a process that's been running for several years, I mean, there are a lot of companies, manufacturing companies, that still have paper, lots and lots of paper.
Yes.
But you know what? They've been making a profit. So they're doing something right. So you can't just come in and say, here, we're going to give you this big ERP system with all the bells and whistles, and we're going to make you change everything you're doing. It's just not going to be helpful.
I think what you just said without saying that I really like is that in treating people kind of like little baby bunnies, well,
Yeah, it sounds funny, but
like prickling a little bit. it's truly like saying we're kicking all egos out the door. You know,
exactly.
here we're going to be super gentle, and that's going to open up space where people can ask questions, where sometimes the arrogance of consultants and like, I got a certification, I know what I'm doing, like it must be you, it can't be me, creates space to ask a lot of questions and to really kind of dig down into like the root of the problem. And so I think that's truly like a fantastic way to approach it, that a lot of times, because people want to be perceived as like knowledgeable and capable, come in with a little bit of bravado that really actually kind of undermines their intent and their need to get at the root of the problem.
Absolutely. I mean, if you have a screen and your client calls up and says, hey, I keep clicking this button, but I'm not getting to where I need to be. You know, maybe you put a green and a red button, and maybe you only needed the green button, or hello, maybe they're colorblind. You know, take time to think through the process. Assume that you as a programmer made the mistake, and that perhaps, you know, let them have the safe space to ask questions. I really think that allows for a good collaborative relationship to develop with your clients. Don't be arrogant.
Yeah, Sarah, it sounds like also like themes of like empathy, like you really know how to put yourself in someone else's shoes and understand, you know, their experience from their perspective, which I imagine allows you to get to the root of the problem way quicker, because I don't know, in my experience, the more vulnerable I am and the more I, you know, I show up as somebody who's eager to learn about their issues and help them, and in a humble way, the more willing they are to be more vulnerable. And therefore, even when we have those language gaps, like you were discussing with the acronyms, we're able to have like open and honest conversations that allow us maybe to overcome those language challenges, you know, or like different understandings of digital needs. And so I really appreciate that. You know, that's part of like your norm, and that's just, you know, your natural approach. That's really awesome.
I mean, seriously, the number of manufacturing sites you go to when you have multilingual people, I mean, they're brilliant. They're so brilliant, but this is an issue they're having. And I know for me, if I'm struggling with something, I'm putting up walls trying to make myself safe. And so a lot of what I'm doing when I come in and I'm speaking in layman terms is I'm trying to break down what I call that zone of resistance. That you don't see, people don't want to adapt to new things. They've got this change is fear, and how do I overcome fear element. But that zone of resistance is, some people want to hold so tight to their Excel spreadsheet, they're afraid they won't have access to what they need to finish out their day. But they don't realize that, hey, if we do this one system, then it allows your tribal knowledge to be disseminated to other people. And so it's not that you need to worry about your job security. It's matter of, you can take a break, you can go on vacation, because that information is accessible for other people and they can help you. So just giving that bigger picture is important. So
totally. And I guess when it comes to like who you're interacting with, you know, your clients, I imagine you're kind of working with a very wide range of, you know, companies and different, you know, size companies. I guess, is there any way that you adjust? Do you see any different trends when it comes to like a large business versus small, or is there anything to that as far as your experience goes?
Absolutely. You know, if I go into a larger facility, I might be talking to C-suites. I might be talking to project managers, et cetera. But honestly, that part of it's about the same, because you'll still have some C-suites who or CFOs who want to know about the numbers and how things are going to go down. I think the biggest thing when I'm talking with small to mid-sized manufacturers, when they see that I've worked with big companies, they're always like, oh, wait, we can't handle that. We can't. And so keeping it simple is so very important. And treating people with kindness, recognizing their skill sets, that they've stayed in business with that small whatever. But if you're introducing a QR code, make sure it has significant purpose to helping their process. If you're introducing a small dashboard, make sure that they have people on staff who can maintain it. Mm-hmm. Because if you go and throw a big ERP system at that company, they aren't going to be able to have the IT support. So they're going to be coming back to you constantly. And not that I'm not willing to take people's money, but I want them to be self-sufficient when I leave them. I'm more than happy to maintenance contracts, but I think it's important that they have the people who can train. It's like any lean process. You have to have a team. You have to have a team who can implement it. And if it's a super small shop, you've got to keep things simple.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to open it up to the comments really quickly. Sorry, Kate. So we have a question here from Mike. So Sarah, you've talked about how you approach business and a little bit about your family. Do you also give back to the community? I'm going to naturally assume this is yes, but I'd love to hear how that.
It's like tease me about how much I like to give back to the community. From the start of my business, because technology was a great place and because I could work remotely, I didn't need a brick and mortar. Mm-hmm. So you could say I've been living the sustainability model for 30 years. My carbon footprint is significantly less, but I am involved in many. I tend to give more than most people do. I give 10% of my profits to charity, and actually more than that. But I truly believe that when much is given, much is expected. And so I help with charity galas. I just helped with a gala that supported the Cancer Survivors Park in Greenville and a golf tournament. And during COVID, I used half of my PPP funds to help a charity in Anderson with their food drive. They didn't have an inventory management system to allow them to give food to the public without, in the past, they'd always had just gathering of things, but they couldn't take into account people's allergies or things like that. And so we created a system where they could, when the Publix truck came in, know how much rice they had, know what they could provide and offer for the public. So yes, giving back is a big part of why I do what I do. It's funny, I don't always tell people about that.
We're back to the pantries. I love it. And inventory management. Like, yeah, I can go both ways.
True pantry, going right back to that whole pantry thing. You can't make a recipe, you don't know what the ingredients are. Or what you have. Mm-hmm. So,
well, those are good points. I mean, and it kind of comes back to also understanding, going into those people's shoes and understanding from like a technology perspective, like how you can help them. And to you, it seems pretty simple, right? But, if a charity is operating on, strict funds, then maybe they don't have the resources to find someone like you to figure out a solution. I volunteered in a situation where the people who were coming in, some of them couldn't read. Some of them had really bad, some of them weren't even able to just type, certain things on the computer just to register that they had received the food. So stuff like that, I'm like, whatever we could do to make, charity more accessible, and also the technology, bridge towards charity is so incredible.
I'm a huge proponent to women in tech, because a lot of times if someone's escaping from a bad situation, a lot of charities are like, let's train them to be a teacher, or let's train them to be a nurse, or let's train them, in this skill set, maybe go work in, but all of those have set hours. I mean, unless you're PR, you can't do that too, you've been full-time a while. And so with technology, you can code remotely from anywhere. And so if a person needs a safe haven and they want to raise their kids, technology is a brilliant way. I mean, especially with these boot camps that are popping up everywhere. And a lot of them are doing some great training and apprenticeships and connecting. And so that makes me happy. I like when I see something that's created so much opportunity for me, seeing how it can help with other people in the community. So
that's really cool. I admire that too. That's amazing. And I guess, so when it comes to like women in tech who might want to get into it, like you mentioned boot camps, do you have any other recommendations? You know, based on everything you've shared, you have a lot of approaches, so I love them all, but I know, that might be
right. It's funny. The technical colleges are way underutilized. When my kids were little, I had this plan for all of them to go to at least a 4-year, and I thought that I needed them all to be that way. But then my oldest daughter was sick her 3rd year, so she didn't end up going to the 4-year she planned on because she couldn't get the immunizations, and so she couldn't live on campus, and it was too far to drive, and she drive well because she was still kind of getting over this illness. But we could take her to technical college and she could go there, and she discovered she didn't want to be a doctor, she wanted to be a nurse, partially because of that technical college. When they said, hey, after you're taking these classes this year, I highly recommend you try being a CNA, see if you love it. And so there was a time for her to have a way of getting into it. And the same thing, technology. Right now in South Carolina, you can take your first 2 years of technology classes for free. And it's a great opportunity for teaching Python. The web design is actually fairly current. And there's easy segue if you want to do 4-year, but they're also working on ways to match people with companies like a boot camp. So I give a huge shout out to the technological colleges here in South Carolina. Even in manufacturing, the mechatronics and all these things you can do. I think people need to look into them more. So
those are great answers. Yeah. I love it.
There's opportunities everywhere.
There are. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. I hope everybody post-pandemic has realized that is about learning and pivoting. I used to really struggle with stress and trying to figure out, but stress is just change. And so stress is agnostic. And so take those opportunities. Do try. I always, if my kids started a sport when they were little, I want you to give it the season. So give it the season when you're learning something. You're not going to pick up Duolingo and be speaking fluent German in 1 year. I mean, you might be able to pick up a ton, but you're not going to be suddenly in front of your German friends speaking with the perfect German accent. It's just not going to happen. But you can have fun learning. So take opportunities where they're presented.
I love that. Yeah. Breaking down like the fear of failure. If you go into a new thing expecting to be perfect right away, it's pretty intimidating. Absolutely. And you're going to feel like you're failing immediately. I do that. I'm guilty of it too, but going at it in a more playful way and being curious and being okay with, not always getting it right this time, I think is a really, really powerful continuous learning curve in technology, right? Because we're always trying to keep up and we're all learning new things all the time. So completely agree.
Oh yeah. Well, I was just in a seminar listening to Mishka Gobig, and she was talking about leading with confidence in a male-dominated environment. And one of the things she was talking about was, as women, we struggle with perfection. School, it served us great. Got 100 on that test. The teacher loves that I raised my hand and I gave the right answer at the right time. Yeah. But if we wait till we have the perfect answer, if we wait till our processes are perfect, we're going to fall behind, and we're doing ourselves a disservice. So I think learning that we can learn from our failures is also important. So
yeah.
What is the phrase? Perfection is the enemy of progress.
oh, absolutely.
100%. Just got to get it out the door. And improve as you go. But oftentimes it's going to be good enough. But I really like what you pointed out is yes, I think women, we do tend to be quite a lot perfectionists a lot of the time. And it can be really discouraging when we encounter failure, because then we automatically apply that to our intelligence, not necessarily the effort that we put forth. And oftentimes when those get conflated or intermixed, it can be really troublesome, or you might not be applying for jobs because you don't meet all of the criteria. And I think the best piece of advice that I got in college was, hey, if you look at this job description, at best, typically men are going to be meeting 60% of qualifications. So set that as your benchmark. No one's going to expect you, because if you meet all of the criteria, you're all of a sudden overqualified. So just go for it. And what's the worst that can happen is that someone's going to say no, right? So if you don't ask, the answer is no.
Or critics, but either way. Yeah, it just try. Go out there and just try to ask the right question. Try to get out there in front of people. Very important.
So in discussion on failure, I'm curious if you have a failure that comes to mind that was obvious, sucks in the moment, but really, had a lot of fruit that came from it.
Oh, wow.
That's a good question.
I'm going to look for the perfect answer to that question, Well, one failure that I made early on was not treat my business like a business, to be honest. Initially, when I started out, because it was such a lifestyle company, if there was money there, we were doing okay. And so learning how to run the business, because let's face it, coding is fun, designing is fun, but balance sheets and profit loss statements are not fun. So I would say, I would say for me, one of my things that recognize, hey, if we're going to really make this something that we can scale up, we've got to pay attention to the bottom line. And so sometimes my charitable actions, I would realize that, sometimes you got to stop and pause and go, hey, charity starts at home. If you want to be able to do things for your company to grow, you've got to pay attention to that. So that is definitely one area that I know. And then also back to the old computer programmers, I sometimes wouldn't speak up because I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I had the perfect answer to what needed to happen. And so now I'm working on that. I'm working on being out there more. I mean, I think the nice thing about being 50 is I don't have to. I mean, it before I wanted everybody to like me. I wanted everybody to, I don't need everybody to like me anymore. I can move forward and give answers and sometimes be completely silly and stupid, and it's okay. I'm doing what I need to do for my family and for my company, and unabashedly. So
whatever you're doing, it's working. That's amazing that you're there. As somebody who, I feel like we're probably all relating in this conversation because, and I think that's part of the perfection, right? It's like we want to be perfect because we don't want our answer to be wrong, because we also want being as, knowledgeable. And I don't know if this is an insecurity or if this is real. I imagine there's sometimes a mix of both. But when it comes to getting things wrong, sometimes I feel like my credibility is might take a hit, maybe in a larger way perhaps than if like a male counterpart, depending on, you know, who the situation occurs with. But I think the fear of
Absolutely.
that happening is big too.
And I think one of the sad things is that we as women are harder on each other than we are on our male counterparts. Our expectations coming to the table, you know, if a woman decides to have a mommy track for a season, do we marginalize them? I would say women marginalize them more than men. I was just in a seminar at a manufacturing site, and we were talking about unconscious bias. And one of the points that was brought out was, okay, there's this older woman, and she's given this really big project that has to be done. And so it's a 12-month project, and she's got to think through all the parameters. And when she's thinking about hiring, she's only going to hire other older women and men because, you know, women might get pregnant. Oh. And I was like, when I first heard that, I kind of stopped and I took a pause and I was like, well, first off, don't have anybody. I mean, so you just don't hire people when they're young because they might get pregnant? Does that somehow? I love Margaret Thatcher. She said, women have a brain and a uterus, and we plan to use both. I think, you know, if you choose to, that's great, but you shouldn't be marginalized if you know, for it. If someone has the skill set and the project is being designed for a 12-month project, you have 9 months where those milestones can be put in place where you can utilize that person. And if you can't utilize that person in the while they're pregnant before the baby comes, then should you have even hired them in the first place? So if they have a skill set, utilize it, put things in place. You know, if you're collaborating, there's that other space to the side there. You can, yeah. So, but as women, we want to conquer Rome in a day. We think we have to have all our ducks in a row, you know, and it breaks my heart, truthfully. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be allies to each other.
Absolutely. Well, I think and it's the token, like if a woman's, you know, could get pregnant, so can, you know, if you think about it too, when it comes to like the male perspective, it's like they also might want to like take time off and have paternity leave. And so while they're not maybe carrying the baby, like they're still the father, right? So I like that companies are becoming more, you know, aware of these like these biases and like creating programs now that kind of address some of those more, I guess, traditional ways that we've thought about things in the past. So I'm glad that you mentioned that because it's something that I've thought about as well.
Well, and a month ago, I was at one plant site and they've just broken ground on a daycare.
Oh, amazing.
So that their employees can have a daycare on site. And I thought, that is brilliant. And they used that in the old days. I haven't seen it anywhere. And so I was like, that is such a great idea. But I mean, even coming back to that concept of timeout, somebody could be in a car accident and not be able to work on that 12-month project. So to do stuff for the what ifs, we've got to lose that.
Yeah.
If you plan well, create good scope, that's a non-issue. So, but then fear starts to, you know, creep in. We have all these fears we put into place on ourselves. And I think one of the things that somebody told me is life's like a roller coaster. And we're on those roller coasters and trying to let things happen, change happens. We can choose to enjoy the journey, by enjoying the journey, or live in fear of the obstacle. So I'm all about bashing those obstacles. Get them out of the way. Look at those obstacles as opportunities.
And if life is going to be a roller coaster, I want to be seated in the front, not in the back.
With your hands raised.
Oh my gosh. Well,
one of my favorite scenes, I don't know if y'all are Ted Lasso fans, but one of my favorite scenes is when Rebecca goes in the bathroom and she puts her hands up. And it was like, I can do this.
And she nails it. Yeah.
Wow.
And she nails it. And yeah. So I think, we've got to change our mindset, put put pause to things. Take time to, before we respond, especially in a state of fear, pause, and we'll find our reactions will come out much better. How we speak with one another, even how we let our brain process the thoughts. We can organize them. We can, get to those lean processes again.
So this kind of leads us really beautifully, especially kind of with what you're talking about of some of the work-life balance things and like bringing a daycare into a job site. So in 2022, we saw a research paper in Erickson Global and Northern Arizona University. It was women in software engineering. And the greatest challenge that they reported kind of in this career field was work-life balance issues. And so 55% of women said, yep, this is a problem. So, and you've deftly navigated that. So how do you approach work-life balance with your team at Credo, now that you're managing a larger team beyond just the family?
Pretty much work-life balance. I think there are times where I forget to come up to air, but then I read an article, and it was by the CEO of Nespresso, what's her name? Anna Ludrum. And she's talking not work-life balance, but work-life fluidity. Ooh. When I was younger, part of that perfectionism was I had to have those time blocks. Everything to be just so in a certain place and a certain time. With work-life fluidity, if there's a day where I wake up at 4 in the morning and I have got an idea, I can map it out, and I can come back and I can pause, and I can, it's not perfectly, this block here is for this answering emails, this block here. Whereas I used to constrain myself that list, and I would just, honestly, I would feel like I was just, and so I think with my team, we do have, so one thing that we do is, you've heard like the rosebud analogy. We have let's share our struggles, the thorns. Our shares are where something's starting to take, a bud. And then, our wins is when the rosebud is coming open, making sure that weekly we're working alongside each other, talking about where we are in a project, how can we come along and collaborate with each other, being allies with each other, I think is very important. Because sometimes you don't know that someone's mother is sick, or hello, they have a child and they're having daycare issues. But if you take time to learn the person, to know the person, that helps tremendously. And also sometimes I'll be looking at someone and they've been putting in all these hours, and I'll be like, you have to take a break. And I'm pretty, even though we're in manufacturing, I am pretty solid on that Sunday. Take a day of rest. Take a day to spend time with your family. Take time to breathe. Because when you're holding in so tightly, you can't function. You're gonna hit a wall. So for the charity with the golf tournament, I had my guys go play golf. And I was like, you guys, I'm paying you to go take a day, go play golf. Go play golf.
Amazing.
And if you don't like golf, just go and enjoy the beautiful outdoors that is there and help out. That's why I like doing the charity engagement. Is it is a way to pause and reflect and to see that, with cancer survivors, everybody's in touch with cancer. So, in some way, we're all survivors. But when you see these charity things, you know that, okay, my struggles don't look so bad. Or oh, wait, somebody else is going through what I'm going through. So that's kind of how I like to help my guys. So yeah, with my team.
Create that perspective that allows for that work-life balance.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing. We've got about 5 minutes left on the broadcast, so I want to.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
No, time flies, right? When you're having fun. So I just wanted to kind of share a few comments that folks have left over the course of the show. So we have a comment here from Emmanuel. Thanks for sharing. In your opinion, in your opinion, which industry is investing more in Industry 4.0 that we can look now for a career? So maybe what are some opportunities that you see developing?
Well, I mean, honestly, in South Carolina, sky's the limit. There are so many opportunities in manufacturing. HR, truthfully, it sounds like a weird place for smart mobility, but right now, with all of the employee outage issues that have been happening, people are like, what's going on? Post-pandemic, how do we maintain our employees? It's more than just a HR thing now. CFOs, all the C-suites are looking at it. And so there's data analytics be captured. Maybe we created an HR application that's tracking some things, but some things you don't realize, when somebody calls out, if they're going to a security desk and the data is not tracked, you don't realize why they're calling out or how often they're calling out. It could be they're quiet quitting. They've had 10 grandmothers die. That's not really true. But if it's not being tracked, you don't know. Or it could be somebody's having car trouble. And maybe there was some sort of way of carpooling with, there's a way to help out. So the data analytics behind why people are calling out is going to be a game changer. So HR has been the stepchild for a while in manufacturing, partially because, to be honest, the cost. I mean, if the production line gets done 48 hours faster, that's saving a ton of money. So there's cost avoidance versus cost improvement, but then you look at how much it costs when you lose an employee, and it's six figures too. So I think definitely looking into areas in HR is going to be a huge thing in the next couple of months and years. But in this area also, automotive. With EV stuff that's going on, semiconductors, just all the automation that's done in the plants with sensors for training. If employees have been trained correctly, or if they come up to the machines, is the badge can allow them to use the machine, things like that. There's, like I said, so many opportunities. Just ask the right question. I would say Bernard Marr is a huge proponent of Industry 4.0. He's a great author. I highly recommend people who are interested in Industry 4.0. If you don't want to read all his books, definitely follow his blog. He has some great future skills to learn information.
Awesome. Thank you. That's a great recommendation too. I'm taking notes. We also have some comments from Rhiannon. She's also sharing she learned BASIC at a young age too. And she also
1,000 lines of code to do anything.
She also had to leave just a little bit early, but I love Sarah's metaphors and ownership of her motherhood and background in her approach. I think we spend too much time trying to pretend we're all coming from the same place and devaluing our unique perspectives. Thanks as always. And I think that's
I totally agree with her.
In a way, like beautifully sums up our conversation today of, own the unique approach that you bring, to manufacturing.
Be your own unicorn.
Yeah, there you go. Be your own unicorn.
Yeah, Sarah, I think,
I love that.
We can't say how grateful we are to have
and then we'll wrap it up here with Mike. Great conversation today. Thanks and to myself, Kate, and special thanks to Sarah, of course. Thank you so much for joining us here today. This has been truly a pleasure to sit down and speak with you, learn more about Credo Manufacturing. Where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about your software, your personal journey, or just stay in touch?
I am happy to share my LinkedIn. I'm building relationships. If you're in the upstate, I'm happy to grab a cup of coffee.
Awesome.
I love sharing.
Kate, you'll have to take advantage next time you're in North Carolina.
I was going to tell you, as soon as I'm time I'm in the area, I'll definitely be getting that coffee with you. Thank you, Sarah, so much.
Absolutely.
Today. This has been so nice, so wonderful. Really appreciate you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us on Industry 4.0 Club, and have a great rest of your afternoon. And stay tuned for future broadcasts.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everybody.